Hey guys, welcome back to the desk corner. Welcome to a new video. So I have been kind of excited about charcoal lately after making a video about it, and I decided I would recreate a cat eye that I drew a few years ago. Now I'm not actually recreating this exact cat eye, but I decided I would do another cat eye from another reference photo. This one was in 2018, so that's 3 years ago that I created this. It feels so much sooner than that. I cannot believe that it's already been 3 years since I created this. Time really just flies. I used my General's charcoal for this one, and today I'm going to be using my General's charcoal pencils as well as my Cretacolors, which I've already confessed my love to millions of times on my channel so far. If you're new, well, you're probably going to hear about them a lot, so prepare yourself. But in this drawing in particular, I'm going to be mostly using the General's charcoal pencils. And yeah, I thought that this would just be fun for me to do. I like sometimes recreating drawings and other times creating drawings that are similar to those that I've done in the past and just see how things have changed over the years. So if that sounds interesting to you, let's go ahead and get straight into the drawing. So recently I have been wanting to get back into using my General's charcoal pencils, and so that's what I'm doing again for this drawing. I recently made a video about charcoal pencils for beginners, so I'm going to link that down below in case some of you are interested in that. But for today's drawing, I'm mostly going to be using my General's charcoal pencils because I just haven't really been using them. They've been sitting there for a while and I've just been not feeling like working with a messy medium, but then I started feeling like maybe I want something more loose and creative, which is how charcoal feels to me. And as much as I love the Cretacolors and how awesome and precise they aren't that same loose, messy feel that normal charcoal is. Sometimes it can be a positive, other times it can be a negative, but in this case I'm feeling like working with something like that, so it's a positive. I'd like to work with something a little bit messier and more like blendable, or I guess the word would be easier to spread around the paper and manipulate, because that's kind of how charcoal is. So here what I'm doing is sketching in or filling in all of the basics for the eye, all of those basic dark areas, and then I'm going to use the dust from these areas and kind of move it into, or I guess use a Q-tip to push it into the other areas, a Q-tip, a tissue, a blending stump, whatever, and get more of a mid-tone in certain areas. And I kind of just like this method of working from dark to light with charcoal. I don't really know how else you can work with charcoal unless you have a straight powder. Even then, I think working from dark to light seems to work better, at least for me. So that's how I go about it. Sometimes I don't feel like being extremely careful with my artwork. Like, I'm still careful here with where I'm intentionally putting my pencil and pressure, like pencil pressure and things like that, but I'm not just being like super precise about pencil strokes. I kind of just want to have fun with it. I just kind of get into that mood sometimes, and that's why I step away sometimes from colored pencil, which requires you to be very, very precise, and I like to play around with other media as well, like charcoal, where you can, just be a little bit looser and have more fun with it. Now with charcoal, I kind of feel like you are creating an underlayer the same way you are with painting. You create that first underlayer and really just blend it out, and it's not going to look detailed or sharp. And then as you layer on top slowly, you're going to add more and more detail until you get to your final layer of details. And that's kind of how you do it with charcoal, whereas something like colored pencil, you can start with an underlayer, of course, but you are able to get away with adding in details earlier on. I feel like with charcoal, you can make things look good more easily. I don't know how to properly explain that. I think it's because charcoal is so dark that you do not have to worry at all about getting enough contrast. So contrast can be an issue when you're working with colored pencil or graphite or pretty much anything really. When you're working with charcoal though, I mean, for me, it's fairly easy to get that contrast because I'm starting out with my darkest of darks, like starting out with that and then just using some kind of blending tool to get my midtones and then leaving my highlights. So it's really not very complicated. It's easier to me than graphite even, because with graphite you have to build up and it's hard because you don't want to get the graphite shine. So you often have to use something else along with your graphite if you want a very dark, almost black value in your drawing. And then with charcoal, you just don't have that problem. So for me, I find that my pieces that I'm working with charcoal, or my pieces that I create with charcoal, tend to turn out better overall. Like, unless it's a combination of graphite and charcoal, then those turn out very well too. But sometimes if I'm using just graphite, I'm not always happy with my results because I'm just not getting the amount of contrast that I would like to get. And I think this is where, like, I've always said that value and contrast is more important than detail. And this is hard for me sometimes, even I struggle with this, but I know that that is true, because when you are looking at something and it isn't the highest level of detail, but it has a good amount of contrast and value, it can still look realistic. But if you have something that doesn't have the right amount of contrast, then it's just not going to look realistic. It's going to fall flat a bit. And I'm not saying details don't help you out, because they do. Adding details is always going to help you out, but it's just not what makes something look realistic to begin with, if that makes sense. So I think that's why charcoal, I feel like, is something great to start out with if you're new to art, because you're able to really learn value. With graphite or with colored pencil, you're like distracted by the colors, so that's totally different. And then with graphite, you do learn value, but you're not getting the darkest value that you possibly can, so it's a little bit trickier. I guess I should mention charcoal sticks in here at some point, because I know a lot of people like to use charcoal sticks. For me, that's just a little bit too messy and a little bit too hard to get details. Yes, you can still get details with like one of the corners or edges of the charcoal stick, but for me, it's just not really my thing. I don't like pastel sticks either. I'm just not into any sort of sticks like that. So I prefer pencils. I mean, we already know this. You guys already know this if you've been here before. I'm obsessed with pencils. I'll always choose pencils over anything else, over paintbrushes, over markers, over pastel sticks and charcoal sticks for sure. So anything that comes in a pencil form, like, I'm gonna use it. If it's charcoal pencil, if it's pastel pencil, watercolor pencil, I mean, all of these things. I'm just a pencil addict, and that's just kind of how I am. But I'm sure a lot of people would rather work with something like a charcoal stick, or maybe charcoal powder and just paint it on. I mean, I would probably do that too. I'm just a little bit too lazy, and I feel like I would end up making a mess out of that. Speaking of messes, as you guys can see, this was kind of a messy piece. I'm kind of just making a mess out of the fur detail at the top with my Q-tips. And honestly though, I feel like with charcoal, when there's a mistake, it's not really even a mistake. It's just kind of like something to add to it. So it's just fun to not be too like particular about things, because with charcoal, I feel like something is bound to, I guess, go wrong, or you're bound to make some kind of mistake, just because the powder just spreads around so easily, and you often end up with blunt pencils. So, you know, until you add your final layer of detail, it's not going to be easy to get in those details unless you really sharpen your pencil. So with charcoal, it's just fun to play around and see what you get, see what your end result is. I went in with my Cretacolors at the end. I just couldn't resist adding some detail, and Cretacolors are great for adding detail. And I decided that the eye needed a little bit more to kind of stand out, I guess, and to just look a little more realistic. Since we're doing an up-close shot, you want to add more detail, of course, compared to like a very far away shot or something smaller. Then I wouldn't really bother adding too much extra detail. Even with this though, I didn't add as much as I probably should have, because I was just having fun with it. And yeah, and I'm using a Q-tip here, by the way, like most of the time, you know, like blending stumps sometimes, Q-tips most of the times, but you can also use a paintbrush if you prefer. Alright, that's just about the amount of detail I'm going to add here. I'm just going to leave it like this, and I want to know what you guys think of this drawing, because I absolutely loved it. Here's what it looks like in the end. I feel like I got a lot of soft shading in, but I also got in a lot of nice details, and I'm going to compare to the 2018 one, which was obviously a different photo, and you can tell in the 2018 one that this is a cat more than you can tell in the 2021 version. But I really liked the reference photo that I saw for this one, and I thought that it would just be fun to do regardless of if it really resembles a cat or not. And of course, for this eye, it was a bit smaller and I decided to do a little more of the fur. But I kind of like them both. I don't think there's one that I really like better than the other because they're both kind of different, but I do have to say that the newer version has a lot softer of shading, which I like, and I'm able to get in some sharper details due to my Cretacolors that I've confessed my love to. I'm curious to know which one you guys like better. Original cat eye or cat eye 2021 that looks less like a cat eye but maybe more like realistically glossy and all that. Would you guys like me to do more drawings in charcoal on this channel? And if so, what would you like me to draw? Because I'm having a lot of fun with this so far. I guess I actually need to sign this one too, but would you guys like me to do more drawings in charcoal? If so, let me know. I usually will do a graphite charcoal combination for something like a bigger piece, like a portrait or something like that. But sometimes it's fun to just use charcoal and just experiment and play around with it. That's about it for today's video though, so thank you guys so much for watching as always. Don't forget to leave a comment down below if you would like to give your input about these drawings or your opinions of charcoal pencils, and I will see you guys in the next video. Bye!